Hi, my name's Grayson Warren. Today I'm going to be talking about activity analysis and the activity that my wife was doing. The activity that she chose was making chicken meatballs. Here is my wife. Some of the things that she likes to do are cook. She loves cooking as showing a way of love to people she cares about. She's Italian, so Italian food is a big thing. And through this activity analysis, there was a lot of steps to make our meatballs. Some of the objects and properties that were used were a pan, water, meatballs, cheese. And the properties where the pan is heat conductive, it's flat, it's usually metal, it has a handle. You use it on the stove. Some of the properties of the meatballs were soft and round, made from ground chicken, should be raw, hold shape when formed, and change color and texture when heated. There was also other objects and properties like the onions, the stove, the bowl, the spatula, the seasonings, and the tongs. In each slide, I used pictures to show the activity and what is happening during each step. First step in making meatballs was prepping the onions and peeling the onions, then prepping the ground chicken, cracking the egg, adding breadcrumbs and cheese. You add some water to make the chicken moist. Then you dump the onions into the bowl. You add seasoning, and then you mix all the ingredients. And after that, you start forming your meatballs. So you use a spoon to scoop chicken together. You roll chicken into a ball using your dominant hand. You pat down the chicken into a good size using your non-dominant hand. And you kind of rotate between hands throughout the process. And lastly, cooking the meatballs takes turning on the stove to preheat the pan. Then you're going to rotate the stove to make the temperature according to what is needed. You're going to pour olive oil into the pan, place the meatballs into the pan using the tongs and using your dominant hand. And you're going to let it cook for a couple minutes until each side is golden brown. You're going to be flipping the meatballs with your dominant hand. And some of the body movements that are needed are shoulder flexion for cutting onions, elbow flexion and extension, wrist extension, radial and ulnar deviation, pronation, and opposition for cutting onions. For peeling onions, some of the skills that are needed are thumb opposition and flexion. You need motor coordination, wrist flexion and supination, finger flexion and extension. And then for mixing ingredients, some of the movements are shoulder abduction and flexion, elbow flexion, wrist circumduction, pronation and supination, and trunk flexion. And then we also have a couple more, which include pouring the ingredients and measuring, rolling the meatballs, and cooking on the stove. And then we have our space demands. Our space demands consist of what we need in our space, what type of space we need. So when making meatballs, you need a clean counter space, you need an accessible sink and stove, you need room for tools and supplies. You need to be able to move around without bumping into things. You need a safe layout and you need proper lighting. And then we also have some body functions that were used, which was you need to use joint flexibility, strength and endurance, gripping. You need fine motor skills, bilateral coordination, ability to make decisions, balance and posture, paying attention. Some motor skills for body functions are reaching and grasping, holding and handling, coordinated hand use, tool use, lifting and turning, and controlling force. And some of the sensory functions are vision, touch, smell, pain perception, thermal awareness, and tear response. And then lastly, in our last couple slides, we had body structures. So the body structures that were used were the scapula, the clavicle, the humerus, and then we listed the joints. And then we also have other body structures such as the humerus, the radius, the ulna. Some of the joints are the humeral and humeradial joints. And then lastly, our another body structure that we used was radius and ulna, along with the joints, which is proximal and distal radio-ulnar joints. And we have more body structures and joints included, which is the radius, ulna, carpal bones, the radiocarpal joint. This allows wrist flexion, extension, radial, and ulnar use. We have the metacarpals included. We have the muscles of the core and the back, the intervertebral joints. We have the pelvis, femur, and lower limbs as well for posture and standing balance. And lastly, our adaptation of the activity to help somebody that was unable to stand for a while or have certain movements, we would follow as such, which would be to help someone with limited hand strength or fine motor coordination. The activity of making chicken meatballs can be adapted in a few ways. Instead of mixing ingredients by hand, a large mixing spoon or an electric mixer can be used. This reduces the need for strong grip or hand endurance. If the person has trouble standing for long periods, a stool or chair can be used so they can sit down at the counter while prepping. Pre-chopped onions and garlic or using powdered versions can make the process easier. Measuring tools with large handles can also help with easier gripping. For forming the meatballs, a scoop or meatball shaper can be used instead of rolling by hand. And lastly, baking the meatballs instead of frying them removes the need to stand at the stove or flip each one, which can be hard for someone with limited range of motion or arm strength. And then we have our references. Thank you so much. This was my activity of making chicken meatballs.